Hey guys, what's going on? This is Brad from the Ad Army, and today this is an off-the-cuff video about Yu-Gi-Oh! Budgeting and is Yu-Gi-Oh! Affordable and or should it be affordable? So there's a lot of talking points here. I think the community right now is like all up on this situation, so I think everybody's talking about it a lot. One of the things that got me to talk about it is I actually saw the Mega Capital G video, and I know a lot of other videos probably exist about it, and one of my favorite content creators for this is like Cali Effect, because he makes some budget videos. Also, I will give a shout out to like MBT if you guys ever watch him. I really liked his budget series he did. I forgot his name, but the guy's name is Danny. I really liked watching those videos because it's at the core what I think people really should be doing with Yu-Gi-Oh! If they're not going to be playing competitively, is just having a really good time playing with whatever budget decks that they want, or just decks in general. So, that's the key thing, is more of having fun and also enjoying it, but trying to find your way through it by navigating. So after last week, because I did the 7-day upload, I want to take just a little bit of a break so I can figure out some stuff that I want to do. Also take, a breath in and kind of figure out where I want to navigate. There's some stuff coming up that I want to talk about in the Digimon world, because obviously the 02 movie's coming out. So quick update on that before I get into the Yu-Gi-Oh! Stuff. Also, my Vanquish Soul stuff is almost done. So if you saw the last part, I'm almost finished. We're almost there. I'm waiting for Snow Devil in the mail at this time of recording. So after it comes, I will have the full deck that I've been working on, at least the core, and I'll be able to give the final part of that budget version of the How to Budget series with Yu-Gi-Oh! For Vanquish Soul. So I'll be able to at least show a deck list. There'll be content around Vanquish Soul coming out, kind of how I think this deck will move going forward, why it's actually a very fantastic deck, and why I would suggest a lot of people that are trying to find a deck, I think, for this format specifically, but don't want to invest in any of the major engines right now. I think this is actually the deck to do it. If you want to still invest in something pretty powerful, but also, stay within going, past that like $200, $300 mark, thanks to the Rarity Collection. But that's the Rarity Collection is about to come out on Friday. I will be having another video focusing on like what you should do if you're just beginning and kind of like where you should go about it, because I'm going to be buying into the set a bit of myself, just because I'm really happy with some of the reprints, but also kind of explaining why I don't like the set too much. But it'll be explained in this video as well. So I've caught up on all the updates. Let me just get to talking about the stuff that this video is about. So let's get into cracking with the first thing. So how is Yu-Gi-Oh! In terms of being affordable, and should it be affordable? In my opinion, it actually is affordable. I think the problem that we're having is a competitive issue. And the reason I say it's a competitive issue is not with the competitive community or people who play more competitively. It's actually an issue of should I think being competitive be affordable. Now, the reason I suggest this being the main issue is there's a few different, things I could point out to in different, like either TCGs or specifically in video games, which is an easier way to show that like you do have to pay to in order to like be good at the game. But then there's also the extra level of actually putting in the work, which is where I think a lot of the competitive community in Yu-Gi-Oh! Prides himself in, and I do believe that is actually one of the other keys, is that you really need to play a lot. But the reason why I think affordability is this big question that we talk about is if we keep the barrier of entry really high in terms of affording cards that are going to be like meta staples, they're just really powerful cards. Do we effectively allow, anyone from the community or just anyone trying to transition into maybe the more competitive aspect of Yu-Gi-Oh? Do we keep them from playing in the game? Now, I'm going to start with basically what I think the hot button issue usually is like we look at our meta staples first, because I don't want to look at deck cores and engines yet, because that's a whole, I think, a separatory issue. We got to look at deck cores. Now, we got to look at staples. So the reason that I always have to talk about, staples being the crux is that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a very staple heavy game. And the reason I say it's staple heavy is that, yes, you can have decks and certain decks with different deck cores to be really oppressive in the metagame. But without the expensive staples to go alongside most of these decks, we do get sometimes where decks come into the metagame and then it's just their cards and they become really good. But there's always the staples, the extra deck cards that become staples. They're always the ones that keep rotating back in, that are usually where our wallets are going. So my perfect example of this with the recent format is actually SP Little Knight, obviously. Cards from Age of Overlord. They've made a massive impact on the metagame itself, but the problem is, are they outpricing people who just want to like pick up the cards? So that's why I always said, affordability is always a competitive issue, because there's some people who just want to play it for fun, But at that point, if you want to play it for fun, do you really want to like spend all that money, which is usually the that is the main core of the problem here. One of my things is this. We've seen a lot of cards that are technically staples go down in price a lot. Like Ash Blossom is probably the one that I would pick as the most like active card to go down in price because it's gotten a lot of rarities. That's a separate issue to why I think Yu-Gi-Oh is having a big problem with, keeping collector value, but we'll get to that in a second. Point is, Ash used to be an extremely expensive card. I remember people during the time when the structure deck for Soulburner came out, specifically for the Salamangreat structure deck, I ended up getting 3 of those because I wanted to play Salamangreat, but more importantly, the Ash Blossoms were important because up until that point, I think Ash had only had the 1 reprint in the Shadows and Valhalla set. I remember my friend opening a lot, and he was thrilled that he got 2 Ashes. Point aside, like that was a major thing because Ash hadn't had a lot of reprints. We didn't know if we were getting an Ash reprint. We eventually did get another Ash reprint, but there were short prints. And if you guys want me to tell you about short prints, I bought like $200 worth of the Legendary Collection Kaibas. I remember buying a ton of them, and I remember being so upset for the most part because the return value on that was really low. I think the best things I pulled were I got an Ogre, 2 Drolls, and I don't even think I pulled an Ash. So that's kind of just telling you guys right there is like, yeah, the value is like really hard on a lot of products during the past, but we've gone out of our way. I think Konami has done this to give us decent reprints. Like, the joke a lot of people would say in structured decks is that we'll probably get another Valor reprint before an Ash reprint. So, that was something. But like point aside from that, there was a lot of different strategies and structured decks that were printed. They were missing a lot of their key cards. I know one of them was, I believe, I can't remember the structure deck exactly, but a few of them have been missing their cards that they should have had. We had like replacements, so I know people weren't happy about that. I do know like the whole reason that like the Cyberdark structure deck was actually worth picking up was just because of the Imperm reprint. I do think that this is something that I think we keep coming back to because everybody uses the staples. So even I think even at this point, even people who just play casually, they still want staples for their decks, right? Like I find this really interesting when I tell people about one of the bigger problems I see is we keep on telling certain players, like if they're playing like maybe rogue, like not even like rogue or fun decks, like decks that aren't that powerful, and they want to put like 3 Ash Blossoms there to make it better. Yeah, it's not going to make it like a tier 0, tier 1 deck by any means, but it does increase its sustainability, its power, stuff like that. So that is where I get that issue of understanding from people that want things to be more affordable, that yeah, I do get it, because why on earth would you not want to get the most like hot button card for all decks to put in your decks? It doesn't matter if it was like Dark Magician, Red Eyes, Blue Eyes White Dragon. You could go to like, I don't know, Cyber Angel, Pure with, you get my point. It's like a lot of these cards that people want that happen to be staples. They're very expensive and they want to just throw it in any deck. I think that's why a lot of times I find it strange that Konami just doesn't do the multi-rarity print that we get here, where, some cards are supers as well as secrets or something, and having the multiple rarity through the entire box. Because a lot of these hot button staples, regardless if you end up like putting them to 1 or 2 on a ban list, people are still going to want them. And the more importantly, if someone wants to max rarity, there will always be those people. But the problem is, if you keep changing the fact that max rarity cards are unavailable, or not even unavailable, but even those cards that are printed in the very high rarities that aren't printed in any other lower rarities, people are always going to be priced out, which is the situations we're having now. See, SP Little Knight making his debut is already at $100 for, a singular copy. Now, here's my thing. Do I feel bad? Technically, no. I mean, I did want an SP personally. I don't know if I would have thrown it into Vanquish Soul specifically, just because I would throw it in if I was playing competitively right now at a tournament. I'd probably buy one to throw in the extra deck just because it's really strong. But if I had to be honest, I probably wouldn't pick it up because I'm not playing for fun. I honestly, the last card I ended up picking up specifically competitively was Chaos Angel, and that was only because a person I knew needed some money, so they were willing to let go of one of their was Chaos Angels. They had 2 of them, and they told me, hey, look, I need the money. I'll sell it to you. Just, it's an EU print because it looked cooler. So, I was like, okay, sure, I'll help you out. It was more to help out the guy, but still, like, words aside, like, yeah, I took advantage of that. And I wouldn't blame any of you guys for it. But I mean, come on, my thing is this. If a card out of the set immediately for most decks is like $100, I mean, we don't just have that laying around. Like even when this guy helped out when I bought the Chaos Angel from him, I technically didn't really want to buy it. It was just more of like I don't have one, and he was giving me a really good deal, so I said sure, I'll help him out. The reason I bring this up is yeah, like a lot of times our cards do have value, but they will fall. Like even this Chaos Angel, I looked at the value. He was giving me a steal, so I was like, he's giving me a steal because we know each other. But the point is, it will fall in price. Like a good example of this is probably, I mean, it went back up because we didn't have the ban list on it, but like Fenrir before we had our last ban list, it was like $9 and it was holding at $8 to $9. But if we had hit a ban list on it, all Fenrirs would have probably been a massive drop in price. And people aren't even playing pure cash Tira like that anymore. They're just playing, the Fenrir as an engine. And even with me, I'm not going to spend the money to get 2 more Fenrirs. I already spent the money to get the 1. And I'm rocking with the 1. I kind of like it. It's whatever for Vanquished Soul, but the point is, it goes with the Yu-Gi-Oh thing. I would never have paid for this at full price, because this was like a $30 or $40 card for the Ultra. So I'm just putting it out there for everybody who's trying to say, oh, well, if you want to, yeah, if you're competitively playing, I mean, I don't think you necessarily put a price on everything. You just try to make sure you don't break your bank, and then you want to play. The key thing is you just want to play, win, and get good at the game. Yeah, you're going to need every card available to you. So I'm not going to argue with those people, because I think they have a valid point with that. But I don't like the idea that Konami can't do the same thing they do in the OCG here, and they wouldn't like benefit from it. Like one thing I thought was very interesting is this. If I were to have like a younger person play the game, one thing would be a problem is they would need access to like $100 cards, right? I'm talking about $100 pieces of paper. Or cardboard, whichever you're going with. And it's not me dismissing Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm just saying, like, for any game, like, if it's that expensive for that physical thing they're playing with, and they're just putting it on the field, right? But like, they could get damaged. Those are investments. Like, that's crazy. I think that's ridiculous. I think having a lower rarity option for like $10, $20, that's fine. I think that would be insanely smart. Because guess what? You could even have rarity people or like collection people chase for them, because imagine if one is more like, vice versa for like short prints, right? This would actually explain short prints in like a very smart way, where like, oh yeah, it's very hard to pull the secret rare version of SP Little Knight because there's only the super one, which is the main one, and then the quarter century secret rare one, which is the one we're having now. Be like, oh wow, that's really unique. Like, wow, that costs a lot of money. And people would actually, I would assume, chase for it, because there's a lot of people that want to do max rarity. They want to get the card. So at that point, I'm looking like, why don't we just do that? That would make a lot of sense. People would want to pay. And as we move into something like where I'm saying, is it supposed to be, and should I agree with it? Personally, I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Is already affordable. I think the problem is we're having this issue where how competitive and viable do you want your decks to be? Because we also have another issue where we only have the one format, which is where I think we have another issue. Because if we only have the one format, which is obviously our limited or mastered format, whatever, its problem is effectively every deck is playable, but that means only top decks will exist, right? At some point, like not every strategy can be good. Like that's just the honest truth. It can be, like there can be if they give it like insane support, but the problem is we can't just keep doing that over and over and over and over again, because eventually they'll get boring. It'll just literally be giving the same or different strategies beyond busted cards so that they can just be destroyed, really good. The point aside is we want to make it fun for people, but simultaneously we need to find a way to split up this situation if we're not going to do multiple rarity prints, at least in my opinion. The reason why is I feel like someone who wants to play, like I mentioned before, they want to play a Red Eyes deck or something, maybe we should have a format where they can play it. I know we do have like Heart of the Underdog, and I'm a big fan of Heart of the Underdog tournaments. I played in them before, and I think they're absolutely fun. Besides what people think, where it's just a bunch of junky fun decks, that's not what happens. At least for the locals I went to when we did it. They basically had a week period where basically what would happen is everybody would have a chance to jump on a Discord call, and everybody would vote for a ban list besides the tournament organizers. They would make an original ban list for us to start, and then we would eventually work either cards or decks on if they were too viable. And honestly, it was extremely fun because it gave us a chance to input on if you wanted to participate in the Discord calls. And if you didn't want to, it didn't matter, but you at least got to have an evolving meta. So maybe you had to change up like 1 or 2 cards in your deck. Maybe you were the one who was really powerful in the tournament that like made a strong impression on people. And they're like, well, we need to hit that deck. So they hit your deck. Funny enough, I remember I played Six Samurai FTK because I just wanted to try it out because I never played it. I always had Six Sams and never played this strategy. And I finally got a chance to try it. And I pulled it off on one guy. And one time I was going to actually pull it off on another guy, but I messed up my own combo because I had never done it before. Funny thing was, I pulled it off. It was fun. And I was surprised by the end of it. No one talked about abandoning Cannon Soldier on the next week's Discord call. It never came up. And I think it's because I only beat one person. But the point is, everybody was talking about Six Samurai. They weren't talking about the fact that I was playing the FTK version. So like people didn't obviously want to hit it. They were just like, oh, some guy was playing Six Sams, which is hilarious, right? But my point is, that is the issue we're having, is that decks with different power levels or power crept out, they should have a place to be played, or people want to play other decks. I do think that if we were to make a separate format, we could at least alleviate maybe this issue for a part of it, where people would be like, oh, well, I just can't like boost up the power of my deck because I can't afford the cards. Well, maybe you can have a format where you don't have to buy those cards, but maybe you could still play your deck, so you will still be in the game. So if you do want to change your mind and play into the other format, you can always be playing, which is, I think, the key here. One thing I find as another issue going forward is just affordability for Yu-Gi-Oh! Is this. It really depends on what you're trying to do, because I keep talking about competitive versus, budget, or more of like you're just playing for fun. If you're playing for fun, I don't really think you should be dumping all your money into the game, like, or at least like dumping it too much. Like even for me, when I bought these cards for the Vanquish Show strategy to do this video or do these video series, I actually had to like think about it hard, because technically I didn't need to. Because if anything, I've always been a hero player, so I haven't shown it really too much on the channel, just because like I've been taking a break from it. But like, yeah, I could show you heroes, and it's like that deck wasn't cheap, but I built it over time, like really, really slowly. Like most of my decks are built either over time, or the cards have been reprinted so much that I'm able to pick them up for cheap prices, so it doesn't bother me. I also have some deck cores I recently picked up just because I think I want to showcase them later on, but also like they're going to be interesting decks, so maybe the price will go up on them, and I didn't want to spend too much money about them later. Gen X being one of them. And if anyone's going to laugh about or make comments about Gen X not being a good deck, I'm not going to say it's not going to be great. I'm just going to say it's going to be playable, and it's going to be very interesting. Okay, back to the main tangent here. The struggle is this. If you want Yu-Gi-Oh! To be affordable, Konami can just, flip the switch and kind of change some things. But the problem I'm seeing is people are focusing on, I think, maybe where the other issues lie, where we could fix some of these problems, where I think a lot of them are switched off. Because the issue would be like, oh, well, we want it to be affordable. Well, Konami will respond, because I think the Rarity Collection is a great example of them responding to the fact that people are like, well, we still don't have reliable access to a lot of these staple cards, or some of them are too expensive. So Konami's like, well, we'll just give them the Rarity Collection like we had in the OCG, and then we'll call it a day and wipe our hands, right? Wash our hands of the problem. However, I think that's where we have another issue. I like the Rarity Collection. I think it to be really good for the community as a whole. But my problem with the Rarity Collection is the same thing that most people are probably going to have, is that it still isn't reprinting all the cards that are going to be needed for this, metagame going forward. Like, obviously, I think the one that probably should have been included, if they really wanted to push that, would be Thrust. But I do understand they need to save it for another tin or something. It's just, I just keep thinking about it. I'm like, Thrust really would have been really beneficial to get at this point, because a lot of people still need access to Thrust. And if there's people that are probably going to say something like, oh, well, they should have already had it. If not, the reason I'm saying that is like, Thrust has never been, I think, I think at the lowest I ever saw was like $70 to like 60. That's with shipping. And I'm like, that's scratching the surface. That's scratching the surface there. Like, that's the lowest I've ever seen it for the secret. And then it's only the reprints of the ulti. So you're going to tell me that it's been affordable for people. My problem is I don't like it when the staples are basically costing the price of another deck, because by the time you get everything you need, you've paid almost like $500, $600, $700. And to me, it's like, I do understand why people would want it competitively. It's just, I can't justify it myself. Now, like I said before in any of my videos, so if anyone's seeing this for the first time, I always talk about that if you can afford it, just go for it. It's up to you. You have to be mindful of your own money. But for me specifically, it's like it's not that in theory I could have afforded thrusts if I wanted to buy them, but I couldn't justify myself spending that much money. The worst time I ever spent money, or at least one of the worst times I ever thought I spent money on a card, was when I had wanted to buy. Well, heroes were becoming more competitive, and I refused to buy Malicious Bane and a Dusted Gold because I didn't think we needed them too much. But I was like, they were really good, and I chose not to buy them because they were over $100 cards, and I said, screw it. I actually thought buying my Liquid Soldier, because it was so expensive at the time, was my like deepest investment. So I spent $40, 42 bucks on a German Liquid Soldier because I had no reprint. And I was not going to spend $60 to $70 on the Ultra English one. And I was like really satisfied. Literally just it was one card. One card. That's the only time I justified it because I wanted to play really competitively with heroes. And I went in on it. I had the rest of the deck. And believe it or not, that one card fixed a lot of my problems. So yeah, I loved it. I loved it a lot. And my reasoning for this is simple. A lot of times we're going to be faced with issues in Yu-Gi-Oh! That we're going to have to make considerable decisions on money. And I do think the problem for a lot of the community is, why would I want to spend all that money on this card if I'm not really going to play that much? Or vice versa, I'm not going to run to events. So a lot of people who do want to play in events, my thing to you is, I do understand your plight. I know you don't want to spend more than most. But it's one of those things, unfortunately, you're just going to have to make that call until practices change. Like, that's the only thing I can really give as a constructive advice, because obviously I could suggest, oh, they should do this, this, and that to like make it cheaper. But I really can't see that happening unless Konami wants to change that practice. And if they do, well, I love it. Another thing I think Konami could do to actually like make it easier for them is, I understand why some of the side sets we get that have, spots for different reprints. I'm surprised we don't get emergency button like reprints for staples. Like, I mean, like maybe a short print super, or even like making it a CR. If they could do that, would be really good. Like, a card I could see right now being thrown into maybe the Valiant Smashers would be something like the talents, or even something like, Kurikara. I know Kurikara just got an ultimate rare, but if you want to lower the price, I'm like, why don't they just make Kurikara a short print ultra, and then make it a CR in the set? Now, I'm not saying it would be nice to have it as a short print, but at least we'd have another reprint on the bar, and people wouldn't be mad. Like, one thing I think that's very interesting is Konami could really just fluctuate with reprints here, because a low rarity reprint for something like that isn't bad. I think it hasn't been seen since like Tactical Masters, where we got Droll. I think throwing in something like, talents as maybe, shoot, if they threw it in as a rare, people would lose their minds. But the point would be, throw it in as a rare, throw it in as a CR. It would be like a $10 rare, $11 rare, probably maybe higher even, but at least people would have access to it, and it'd be easier to get. Like, I think dropping the price on Thrust itself wouldn't kill the value of the secret or the ulti in any capacity. I think if anything, it bolsters their value long term, because these rarities already exist and they're the OG. Like, if someone told me that, the OG secret Thrust wouldn't be worth more than the rare, I'd be like, you're crazy, right? You're crazy. And vice versa, the ulti thrust will always hold price because we don't get ultimate rares anymore like that. So, this is one of those issues where I think Konami could easily alleviate that problem. And I don't think it takes away anything for a longer reprint down the line. Because at that point, that means these reprints would still hold their value in the set, because there's going to be more people coming to the game at some point. Like, that's one of the issues I think we're having, is that we do have new players trying to come into the game competitively, or like into the physical game, but they're finally realizing one of the problems with the physical game is it's just so expensive. Like, I don't think someone coming off a Master Duel or Duel Links trying to build their first deck should have to jump in like $300-$400 of their own cash to play in physical, when they could just stay on staying on Master Duel at that point. It's one of those things where we have to really find out as a community how we want to approach it. And I think a lot of us are going in the right and wrong direction simultaneously, because a lot of us are just like banging on Konami's head saying, hey, make it cheaper, make it cheaper, make it cheaper. That's not necessarily what they want to do. But what you should be saying is, hey, make more, make more, make more, make more rarities. Make make more of copies of the card, make more of this, make more of that. Like, that's the key thing. If we really think about it, the problem isn't always like a quantity or a quality and demand situation, because they do have the quantity. The problem is we're having such a quantity inside like something super expensive, that the major people that are playing, like the majority of the population, is reduced in terms of their affordability. And also, we're in really tough times if we're talking about specifically the US and around the world. At least in the US specifically, we have inflation going on right now. Things are very expensive. It's holiday season too, so maybe you don't want to throw money into this like too much, but you get my point here, where we're just like, man, you don't want to like kill a lot of the community off in terms of like making them have to pay so much, but simultaneously we have to like find a way to get it going so where the whole community can still play. Like, that's my main thing, is if we could just find a way to get more reprints and like lower rarities as well, hey, that would help out, because I know there's a lot of people who they see a rare or a common and they kind of cringe at it. But to me, I'm like, hey, if that's the only option we got, let's take it. Let's rock with it. I want to get the job done. And the cards, like, I talked about this in my first like budget video with 3 decks with dinosaurs. What else? I almost said the wrong thing. Crystal Beasts and Salamangreat, right? My thing was, and that one is when we get to the point, it doesn't matter if it's a rare or a CR. If it's still a card, it's still printed by Konami, it has the same writing, and it works. And that's the key thing I would love for us to focus on if Konami does it, is that, hey, a rare talent is just as good as a secret rare talent. And that's the thing I talk about with like different strategies, is that it's still playable, it's still affordable, and we can still have fun. It's just that issue where, it's too expensive. I think about a game that I used to play more, was like, I play Digimon, and I still, to a degree, would tell people that if I wanted to get them on a game today, I had to teach them in person, I'd probably teach them Digimon over Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm not going to lie to you. Big reason why is that it hasn't evolved a lot to where it's too crazy for someone to understand. And I think even if I got them in now, even with as everything's going, they'd still be able to play Digimon, the card game, just as simple as it was when I started playing it when it first came out. Problem with Yu-Gi-Oh is you really had to teach people in steps, because it's not a solo player experience game. And what I mean by that, it isn't like, the FTKs or whatever, right? I mean, like, if you were to learn it on your own, it is not going to be as easy as it looks. Yes, Master Duel Links, they all help you if you've never played it in person with people before, but it doesn't get you to where you need to do it on your own. Like, manual action is a lot harder than like, mechanical or computer or whatever, right? Like, when you're actually having to deal with it with your own personal abilities and skills, it's a lot harder. There's a lot of times one advantage you get with Master Duel is that it's going to have the correct sequences for a lot of things. Some things won't be able to activate properly. Like, a lot of times, a funny thing would be, if you're playing someone in physical, they could read something completely not understanding what it means and do an action without knowing. So like, someone reads a quick effect, you could teach them how quick effects work. They'll read a quick effect on a card, and then they may just assume they can use it whenever they want and try to use it on the first turn, even before a phase happens, right? And you have to explain to them, oh, no, there's like all this other stuff technically that goes on. Yes, Master Duel does help you through that, but a lot of people will mess up on that situation. So at the end of the day, for this discussion about it, I think I missed a few of the topics, believe it or not, because talking about it being affordable has really been a hot button issue, and I just really wanted to voice it out. But I will have another off the cuff kind of about stuff, or maybe I'll just hold off on it and save it for the the budgeting videos on Rarity Collection. But yeah, effectively, guys, I'm going to get done the remaining parts of my Vanquish Soul, stuff that I've been doing. It's almost finished. I'm just waiting for the last cards. And yeah, more content for different things are going to be coming. I'm trying to go see the Digimon movie, so I'm just putting it in here now because I'm like, yeah, once I go see it, I will be doing like a review about it. Spoilers alerted, all that. For anyone who watches Digimon on this channel, I can't wait to see it. But more importantly, that's all I've got for you guys today. So this is Brad from the Ed Army signing off. And for all of you out there, to sign on.